The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Nigeria's Apex Bank has announced that the nation's interest rate and other key monetary policy parameters will remain unchanged. The Central Bank of Nigeria Governor Godwin Emefiele announced this and the retention of its benchmark monetary policy rate at 11.5% on Tuesday after the Monetary Policy Committee meeting. The benchmark rate is the rate at which the central bank lends to banks, which therefore determines the rate at which the commercial banks can lend money to businesses and individuals in the country. As usual, this announcement has got the economic analysts crunching those numbers, and we're glad to have one of those on the program this morning. Let's welcome Professor Ken Ife, who is an economic analyst. Professor Ife, good morning to you.
Oh, hi, good morning.
Welcome. Has the Monetary Policy Committee done the right thing and wise thing in retaining the interest rate at 11.5%?
I think they have actually, given all the circumstances. And in the statement from the governor, he outlined very, very difficult circumstances under which they have to take this decision. But I think in the best interest, in general, that is in totality, I think they are above right. There are so many headwinds internationally, nationally, but I think on balance, I think they've taken the right decision. And if you ask me, I mean, that we're all fully aware that American Fed and other European economies they've ended quantitative easing. And so they are now normalizing monetary policy. And the impact of that is that their monetary policy rates are heading up. And that's also going to push inflation. Inflation is already high across the world, but that's going to still push it a little bit further. But the interest rate that is going to go up will actually make foreign portfolio investments that we have been having vaporize away, because they are going to go to safer territories to earn a bit more, and there's this risk factor that they are going to be enjoying. So that will disadvantage us. But that notwithstanding, we have the most MSME-friendly central bank in living memory that has placed diversification and employment generation at the heart of monetary policy. In other words, they are going for growth, going for employment, going for diversified economy, and then choosing the appropriate policy mix, monetary policy mix that supports that. So that's a different approach, but that's the right one. So they're not standing by. They're very active in the marketplace. They're very active with the production systems to make sure that they're energizing the systems and breaking away from the structural rigidities that have characterized the variety of our industries and the political economy that is so dominant in many aspects of our economy. So I think on that score, they're really doing a great job. And they're fighting inflation. This year, as far as I know, is the year they're going to dedicate on price stability. So they are going to be going out for inflation. But I don't think that yesterday is the right day to begin to tighten monetary policy. It will come, definitely on the horizon, definitely on the cards. It will come, but it's a gradual process. And this is because they have so many balls in the air. And when you have so many balls in the air, you have to be a bit careful. You have to wait for some of the policies to sit in so that you can see their effectiveness before compounding. So I think that's what I see, and I think they may well be right.
Okay. According to the CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, the growth recovery for domestic economy was really strong in 2021, and it's expected to progress reasonably in 2022, following considerable improvement in the first quarter of 2021 and a positive outlook for the fourth quarter of 2021. How does this resonate with Nigeria is the question, especially when the inflation rate is still high? I know you have talked about the fact that they're going to fight the inflation rate, but let's share your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, the growth has been spectacular over the last 1 year, picking up to 5% and down to 4%. And we're just waiting for the figure for the last quarter, which I suspect should be just over 3%, so that we'll average out at 3+ for the year. And that's not a bad idea, because that's compare that to what has happened in 2020. And so it was gruesome in 2020. So having said that, even though we are showing some growth, the recovery is still fragile, and inflation is high, as you mentioned. Ideally, we should be a single digit. And that's the ambition of the CBN, that we should be around 6 to 9%. That will happen around 2025, if not earlier, according to all the projections that I have looked at. But there's a concern that in the last few days, there's an uptick in inflation, against the backdrop of 5 months of steady drop in inflation. Obviously, that steady drop that we saw was a contraction in the spread between the food sub-basket index, the core inflation, and the composite price index, which is the headline inflation. The gap has always been, that is, if you look at the food sub-basket index at the top, is always 5% gap to core inflation, to headline inflation, and 9 to 10% gap with core inflation. But that has narrowed down to 3%. So that gradual narrowing down of the spread is actually what was driving the downward trend on inflation. But just last December, is a festive season. Obviously, a lot of spending has gone on food and some of the items like drinks. And then they are cut because they push the price up anyway, because people's ability to buy in Christmas season is very elastic. So they get, so we expected that uptick. I actually thought it was going to be as much as 1%, but it was 0.23%. So there should be no cause for alarm. It's a seasonal thing that we do have when you look at. And on the other hand, it's going to spur growth. When you get the growth figure for the last quarter, it's going to be a bit up. So that's all because of the amount of money that is pushed out and investment, all of that. So does that concern me? I don't think so, because it's very, very marginal. And in fact, if you look deeper into the spread, you will find out that the drop in food sub-basket index is about 0.23. But when you look at the core inflation, it's very small, 0.002. So it's very, very tiny, which means that all indices were roughly staying the same. It was the food that was coming down, that went up. So if the food went up by 0.23 and then the core only moved by 0.02, what does it tell you? It tells you that all the other indices we are keeping, because core is all indices minus food sub-basket index. So when sub-basket in the food went up a little bit, and then there was no corresponding rise in core inflation, it meant that all other players were just there. It was just the movement in food that gave you that uptick. So it will come down.
All right, Mr. Professor, if some, economic watchers are predicting doom for the Nigerian economy and expect that the economy will continue to bite hard, and not just bite hard, bite harder, they're saying the MPC was meant to adjust the rate, in a way to sort of ease the economic burden, and the hardship that Nigerians are currently facing. What do you say to this?
No, see, this thing is very intricate, simply because there is a lot of structural factors at play. You cannot hold money supply entirely responsible. If you look at money supply, there is a lot of money in circulation, because we needed to have those monies to fight our way out of recession. You had 3.5 trillion on the monetary side, 2.3 trillion on the fiscal side for economic sustainability plan. We have so much injection and into the economy in 2020, carried on in 2021, and that was why we were able to quickly jump out of recession within a quarter. But having said that, we need to gradually begin to pull back the money in circulation. You notice that the central bank actually gave quite a huge amount of overdraft to the government. You also notice that there are a lot of politicians now going to be spending money. I'm actually praying that those politicians should bring their dollars and change it to naira, so that we can have more accretion to the bank, on dollar terms, and you have more dollar to spend. But unfortunately, they begin to bring out all the naira that they hid in their septic tanks and all that. Then it's not going to help anybody. So what is going to happen is we're going to begin. If you try to lower the interest rate, the MPR rate now, to say 10 or 9, what you're going to do is that you're going to spur more borrowing. And when you have far more borrowing going, it just exacerbates the situation that we have. The inflation pressure will continue to rise. So it's not the best thing to do right now to lower it. Then, of course, if you raise it, you are going to start challenging the growth that we are having at the moment, and the ability to. So, in whichever way you go now, somebody's going to pay a price right now. So I would suggest that, for example, if you look at the plan, the spending plan, the domestic borrowing is expected to be 2.57 trillion, and then the foreign borrowing is supposed to be 2.57 trillion by the budget, and then bilateral loans 1.16 trillion. If I was advising the Ministry of Finance, I would say go and do the domestic one first and prioritize domestic borrowing, because then you are taking money out of the system. You understand? Issue more treasury bills and then begin to suck out money from circulation. And at the same time, possibly the central bank can also use its own open market operation to begin to take a lot more money out. So without actually tinkering with the monetary policy rate. So that's my feel at this moment, to begin to put pressure on the reverse. We put this in reverse gear. The money circulation in reverse gear, and then consequently affect the inflation, because also the politicians are going to be pouring out their money. So let's put it in a position where we can compete at that market to suck out quite a few amounts of money. But having also said that, but you also need to be aware that almost 40% of our population are unbanked. So, and that's one of the good things that naira was going to help us with, to suck all those unbanked people into the banking system. Once they start using token and all that, then they are visible. And so that means that there are challenges around transmission of monetary policy. You can't have full transmission of monetary policy when a lot of that huge number, over 80 million people, are not in the banking system. And then, of course, that half of the population are poor. So they don't really have as much money with them. So there are fewer people that actually have the bulk of the money. So, so that's why we have to be a bit more trust, in what we do.
Okay, so I don't know if you actually agree. It sounds like you agree, but I'd like some clarification on that, as the CBN governor, Emefiele, and the committee agreed that changing the rate at this time would actually, it's not too good, because at some point, number one, it could probably reverse the gains and it could worsen the inflation rate. Is that what you're saying? Do you agree with them? Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I gave you the both sides of it. Whichever way you go now, you're going to hit somebody. Somebody's going to get hurt. But at some point, we will have to face the prospect of raising the rates. At some point, but I didn't think it's just now. Because don't forget again that next month, you're going to return, there was statutory forbearance on the banks to restructure loans. And then the second measure was to reduce intervention rates from 9% to 5%. So by next month end, CBN is going to start reversing that, taking it back from 5% back to 9%. So somebody's going to get hurt. You know what I mean? So the economy is going to begin to feel that they have to now start repaying at a higher rate. And then possibly that might affect the non-performing loans. So we don't know by how much. So you're going to be careful. You have to wait for these things. Take them one at a time. So that you can see the impact of that reversal. And the monies involved are quite horrendous. So you have to wait and see how that plays out before you compound it with a rate rise. I don't know if I make sense.
Okay, so but let me quickly.
It's always good to allow in a time lag between when a particular policy is going to hit the ground, and then see what the probable impact of it is going to be before you jump to another one. That's why I'm saying that we can't have too many balls in the air at the same time.
Okay, so another concern that was raised is the fact that the emerging markets in 2022 will probably slow down because of, the low vaccination rate and the fact that there are no policies to support this.
No, well, the thing is, I'm not sure Nigeria is in that category because we have a very, very low vaccination rates of single digit. And but we have learned to live with COVID. If anything, our systems, our airlines, our airline has returned to 60% of pre-COVID level. And if you look at the last GDP release, you will notice that certain sectors like finance, ICT, quite a few of them actually posted double-digit growth. So what am I saying is that the rate of transmission and the penalties that we have to pay for that they are not threatening. I can't see that we have lockdown on the table at all. I can see that. So what it means is that life is going to continue. The virus is not going to go away. There's going to be more mutations. But by and large, I think we have learned a few lessons. We are not, me and you, we are using Zoom now. We're not going to stop using Zoom because many of these things have now become new normal. And so we just have to play by the ear. But I don't think we're going to see the kind of disruption that we saw in 2020 that sent many of the sectors to minus 40% growth rate. It's unbelievable. So now we are recovering. And I'm very, very confident that, in the area, I couldn't go for Christmas to go and meet my family in London because I was so scared about the freezing conditions and the transmissibility of this Macron or whatever they call it. But I had all my 3 doses, but I'm still not convinced. So I had to stay back and couldn't go.
Okay. Prof, the monetary policy, apart from the monetary policy rate being retained at 11.5%, the CRR was retained at 27.5%, and the liquidity ratio at 30%. Can you kindly break that down for us?
Okay, the liquidity ratio, we have been performing very well on that. If you look at in December, during the last meeting, they quoted the liquidity ratio around 40%. That's the actual measurement. So which means that it was outperforming the 30% target of liquidity ratio. So that's good news. Then also the CRR at 27.5% is okay. I'll tell you why, because it shouldn't really be agreeing to increase the CRR because we've already increased the loan to deposit ratio from 55% to 60 to 65%. So if you add 27.5% to it, it's 90-something percent. So there's very little room left for the banks to lend. So if anything, if you wanted to increase spend, then you can say, okay, let's lower the CRR rate to release more money to the banks to lend. But I think it's okay that we'll stay where we are at the moment. And we're using a lot of intervention funds to augment the lending. But also, if you look at the banks, they have actually increased money supply to the credit to the private sector. It's almost about 25 trillion. So that has gone up consistently throughout last year. And that's because of the concerted action by the CBN to push lending to the market. Because in the end of the day, about 6 million businesses are receiving all kinds of intervention funds. Over 4 million of them are Anchor Borrowers program. And they got nearly 1 million on the targeted facility. But then there are 42 million MSMEs in Nigeria. So where are the other 38 million going to borrow money from? So that's why they are pushing credit to the private sector so that the private sector will actually be going to the market to borrow. So that's a very sensible thing to do. So I will support that they stay where they are for now, bearing in mind that the situation will change in the next 2-3 months, I believe.
All right, quite interesting. All right, that's very interesting. You are adamant that keeping the interest rates at 11.5% and just keeping them stable, not increasing them, not tightening it, not loosening it, is what Nigeria's economy needs at the moment. Some of your colleagues disagree. They feel that it's...
Oh, no, but this is economics, it's not an exact science. And then also there's political correlation right now. The politicians are all over the place, so they are going to be, blowing hot air left, right, and center. But always ask for the evidence. What's the evidence?
Okay.
When they make all those statements, well, ask for the evidence. And let me tell you another thing is the reserves are not doing badly, well over $43 billion, and also the trade imbalance is ridiculous. We were importing 8 trillion. And then exporting 5 trillion. And we have a trade imbalance of 3 trillion minus 3 trillion. And if you look at the major person here is China. China is dumping 2.44 trillion of whatever they're dumping in Nigeria. So you also have to worry about the impact that is going to have on, you make more money available, then people are going to grab it and go and import. Because import is what they can buy and they sell and passing you have what they call inflation pass-through. So, there's no price regulation here. So anything they buy, whether it's a substandard good, they dump it on the population and the population will pay that huge price for buying dollar at 550 naira and all that stuff. So you also have to worry about that. Because again, and the other thing is this, when I suggest that more of the government borrowing should begin from home, but also at a decent rate, because if you give a good yield on securities, on government securities, then that's going to attract more people into buying. And then also some of the foreign portfolio investment will come chasing that high yield. For example, I saw one that was about 13.something%. That's great because 13.something% is real positive interest because is in excess of 11.5% base rate. So it's going to attract more foreign portfolio investment to come and just get a difference. Or not just that alone, even some domestic investors may go for that, rather than the time when it was under 1% and then it gradually went up to 4-5%.
Okay.
So that is where I would want to see more money go to.
Okay, so let's quickly also look at another concern, that the fact that there might just be ease, with the inflation rate in months. According to the projection of this committee, and of course the CBN governor, it's because of the intervention. They say it's significant, but other Nigerians have queried how significant this intervention from the CBN and the agriculture sector has been. Do you think that this might be a true picture for us?
Look, let me tell you, always ask for the evidence. Anybody that tells you anything, ask for the evidence. Look, if we didn't have the president give the marching order to the central bank that people should eat what they produce and produce what they eat, and given that the central bank exited 43 items from their forex eligibility in 2017, and then backed it by quantitative intervention, end-to-end intervention in agriculture to ensure that we can produce enough. If this did not happen, with nearly 1 trillion now being invested, just 900 and something trillion now invested in anchor borrowers program and all the other ones. Even the targeted facility had a role to play in boosting consumption. Now, if this did not happen, more people would have died of hunger and starvation in Nigeria than all the deaths you have in conflicts all over the country and COVID put together. That's what I'm saying to you.
Okay.
We have a population growth rate of 3%. We have an urbanization growth rate of 4.66%. From now to 2030, the people that are going to be in the city will increase from 50% to 75%. That is an urbanization drift of young people heading out to the city. And the people who are growing the food, our average age is 65 years. And a lot of them are already on the boarding gates. So who is going to grow the food for this country? Who's going to grow the food? And we're not feeding 200 million people. We are feeding 300 million people. All the Francophone countries surrounding us, a lot of them are landlocked. Chad is landlocked. Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, they're all carrying food from Nigeria. And then you've seen one of the example of a header, a farmer crisis going on. Those cows want to come down to graze in the lower belt where you have better tropical vegetation. So we are loaded with conflict, and more people would have been dying of hunger and starvation. So whoever tells you anything, ask for the evidence.
All right.
Now, coming back to you saw the rice pyramid. The rice pyramid was only possible. It does not bring you the picture of what happened about the groundnut pyramids in the past. You saw them over 1 million tons of grains being on display. But that is just in Abuja. All other states are going to be having their own rice pyramid. And I know that this will be released immediately to the millers to mill so that the price will come down when they hit the market. So it's a big feat, by no standard. It's very, very important hit. Now, what is the alternative? And let me tell you why it's so significant. If you ask somebody in 2014, what are the problems of agriculture in Nigeria? You know what they tell you? Oh, feeder roads to the rural area to bring out the food, electricity, then transportation. They also say post-harvest losses is between 30 to 70%, and they will point at all kinds of things. Fertilizer, the farmers need fertilizer, and what happens? You have hundreds of billions of naira buying fertilizers. Yes, one size fits all fertilizer that is being sent to the states, and you see some commissioners going to sell the trailer loads, to sell them, not even give it to the farmers, they sell them. You see some commissioners have been dismissed. Then you've got the grains that will arrive, they never get to the farm until the farming season is over. So what you found here was the actual man that actually does the business, who grows the farm, doesn't actually have a look in. He doesn't have access to the finance. And the government program is not designed to deal with the access to finance that is the critical thing to them, apart from all the shenanigans going on the agricultural development program. So what we had, as you said, in 2004, was agricultural development program. What we have now is agribusiness. You have the bank saying, okay, I'm going to intervene. I'm not going to get involved in the politics. I'm not going to get involved in the political economy of what goes on, who supplies that. No, I'll go for the farmer and then give him the money. So the central bank carries the banks with him and then directs them. First of all, they have to de-risk lending to the agriculture so that the banks are comfortable to lend. Two, you have to implement biometric bank verification so that the banks know who they are dealing with. And then you have to implement the use of satellite to identify those coordinates of the so-called 1 hectare, 1 farmer, where are they? So the bank can actually see where the land is, and they sit on their table and know whether they actually cleared that land or they didn't. Then you also wanted to do GSI, Global Standing Instruction. So if the farmer doesn't pay, the bank is now authorized by law to sweep the account of that farmer everywhere every bank has money.
All right.
And then, of course, the whoever guaranteed him could also sweep the account.
Thank you, Prof. So it's so many things to talk about as regards the economy. You seem to have a bit of an optimistic view of a CBN's policies. You've talked about the rice price pyramids. A lot of Nigerians feel, if things are moving forward with this rice revolution, why are we seeing the reflection in the price on the market? Of course, agricultural interventions.
But it could have been worse. It could have been worse. I painted you the picture. The picture is that we would have had more people dying of starvation and hunger.
We have to go, sir. Agricultural interventions.
Was COVID put together?
Yes, agricultural interventions, in the poultry sector, the farmers can't even afford the feed, sir. But we'll have some more time to talk about it. Thank you very much for your time, Professor Ken Affairs, an economic analyst. It's been very thrilling listening to you and gleaning from your wisdom. We appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
All right. It's still the breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Mercy, that almost seemed like a classroom. I really totally enjoyed it. But we have a discussion on Nigeria's corruption ranking on the Corruption Perception Index by Transparency International. Up next.
Yes. And of course, when we return, we'll head straight to that conversation and look at what all of these figures, the statistics mean for the Nigerian populace and it means for the Nigerian economy.